Now available in paperback and e-readers, Isis, Samurai Goddess. The goddess next door takes on kung fu killers in this action-packed martial arts Isis series adventure. Get Isis, Samurai Goddess in paperback and e-readers today. Recently, Mark Guggenheim, one of the producers of the Berlanti Productions superhero shows, announced that they would be having their first Muslim superhero on DC's Legends of Tomorrow. And they said they are bringing in their first Muslim superhero to take a jab at Donald Trump for becoming the President of the United States. And they say they want to bring in this Muslim superhero as a statement about diversity and to make a statement about Trump's Islamophobia. However, when we look at who they're bringing in, it shows us how dysfunctional the producers at the Berlanti Productions truly are. Now, the Muslim superhero they say they want to bring in is called Isis. Now, when you look at DC's history, they had a superheroine named Isis back in the 1970s. And that Isis was a white woman who found an amulet who gave her the powers of an Egyptian goddess. And I sat there and when they proposed this, I started to scratch my head because why would a Muslim superhero be named after an Egyptian goddess? That's completely backwards when you think about it, because most Muslims believe in Allah and the Islamic faith. They would not want anything to do with anything related to the Heliopolitan faith that the goddess Isis comes from, or the pantheon of the Heliopolitan gods that which the Egyptians originally worshipped. When it comes down to religion, most Muslims would want to commit to their own faith. So that really pokes a hole in the whole diversity argument that your Mark Guggenheim is trying to propose. He's going to bring in a superhero who is Muslim, who is going to be based on a character that has absolutely nothing to do with the religion that she participates in. That's a conflict of interest, and it also shows me that the reason for bringing this character in was more based on emotion, not on logic, and it wasn't based on trying to create a character that would fit the story organically. It was all about taking a jab at President Donald Trump and the election of Donald Trump to the presidency. It seems like the producers of these DC superhero shows just didn't understand the bigger picture of the 2016 election. When it came down to Trump becoming president, that was something many Americans wound up doing, including the 60% majority of white women. So for them to sit there and say that Trump is Islamophobic, well, he needs to look at the large majorities of white men, Hispanic women, and white women who voted for Trump in large numbers. Because for you to say Donald Trump is an Islamophobe, that's a completely backwards argument when you think about it, because you have to think about who voted for Donald Trump. And this is the big problem with many of these liberals out in Hollywood. They don't understand that the large majority of the country voted for Trump, and that's more of a statement on the people of America than it is on Donald Trump, because in order for him to become president, he had to have a large majority. But these liberals show that they're the bigger racists in the room, because they're the ones who are going to bring on a Muslim superhero in the name of diversity, all to spite a president for being racist, not understanding how that shows how racist they truly are, because you're bringing this Muslim superhero in, basing her on a mythology that does not fit her and does not relate to anything to her religious beliefs. That's more racist than what you imply that Donald Trump is, as you allege to being Islamophobic. Moreover, when we look at the bigger history of Berlanti Productions and the productions of these DC television shows as it relates to black men, it shows how truly racist these guys truly are. These guys sit here and talk about Donald Trump being Islamophobic. However, they participate in racism towards black men almost every episode on their DC television shows like Arrow, The Flash, Supergirl, and Legends of Tomorrow. I mean, when we look at James Olsen and how he was treated on Supergirl towards the back half of season 1, where he was marginalized for most of that half of the season, and then put into a coffee cup role instead of being the love interest he was supposed to be due to a ratings decline. And then we look at the way he was treated in season 2, where he is completely emasculated and turned into the guardian of the friend zone. That was racist in and of itself. And then we look at Arrow, where we have John Diggle being the butler to Oliver Queen. And then we have bumbling, stumbling Mr. Terrific, who in the comics is the world's third smartest man and one of the most skilled people next to Batman, and is DC's equivalent to Black Panther. But on the Arrow show, he's a gay, bumbling, stumbling idiot who doesn't even know how to do anything, and was emasculated in one episode where he was literally beaten up by girls. And then we go to Legends of Tomorrow, where we have Firestorm, who has been neutered and emasculated and placed in a marginal role, whereas you had men like Steel, who was out here having interracial relationships with Vixen. And then on The Flash, we had Barry Allen, who is literally having an interracial relationship with Iris West. None of the black male characters on any of these DC television shows are allowed to be strong masculine heroes or express any sort of intelligence. They're literally presented as minstrels and jokes on these shows, or they're relegated to the background and emasculated like your James Olsen and Martian Manhunter were on Supergirl. These guys have been marginalized for years on these DC television shows, which are part of the Berlanti-verse, but we're supposed to believe they're all about diversity because they're bringing in a Muslim superhero. This argument gets more egregious, especially when you look at the CW's Riverdale and the way Chuck Clayton was presented. Now, Chuck in the comics was a nice, friendly artist and one of Archie's friends, but in the Riverdale show, they decide to turn him into a black brute who lies on his penis talking about how he's sleeping with white women and giving them sticky maples. Many people in the Archie comics fans, they're very upset about that because that wasn't the way Chuck Clayton was in the comics. But we have these people like Mark Guggenheim talking about they're bringing in ISIS for the name of diversity, but they don't want to look at how hypocritical they are when it relates to the way they treat black men. Oh, diversity is fine when you're taking a jab at Donald Trump, but you don't want to go and clean up your house as it relates to the presentation of black men on these Berlanti production shows, because the way black men have been depicted on these Berlanti production shows makes a more powerful statement to how racist these liberals are than in what they do talking about bringing in this ISIS to talk about diversity. Now, I look at that whole argument, and it's a faulty argument that really makes these liberals look like bigger hypocrites than what they say about Donald Trump. Now, we know that Donald Trump is very opinionated, and he has his own ideas about things. And he is a racist in many ways. But you're Donald Trump, we know who he is, and we know what he's about. But these liberals, they want to make it look like they're not racist, but in actuality, they prove by their actions they are the biggest racists in the room, because they only tolerate minorities as long as they fit the narrative that they want and they fit into the boxes that allow them to fit into their smooth world. As long as those minorities do not challenge the white characters on these shows, they don't have a problem with them. And as long as they stay in their position, they have no problem with them. It's only when these black characters start getting more popular or start looking like they're going to get a following that they have an issue with them. They only want to bring in ISIS to take a jab at Donald Trump, but that in and of itself is racist, because how do you go against a racist by bringing in a character to take a jab at them instead of trying to include them based on the skill sets and powers that they have? I thought that was supposed to be the criteria for bringing somebody on a team, somebody having the skills, talents, and abilities that would enable them to effectively contribute to a team. But according to Mark Guggenheim, we need to take a jab at Donald Trump, and that's not going to affect the quality of the show. When I look at these producers and I look at their ideas, they don't see how they're derailing themselves, and they don't see how they're derailing the quality of their shows. Legends of Tomorrow was a shaky show to begin with, and this right here, bringing in this ISIS character, to say that you're taking a jab at Islamophobia means that you're going to try to bring politics and put that at the forefront instead of giving us good stories. What most comic fans want are action-adventure stories that stay true to the source material and give people an entertaining story that is going to bring the DC universe to life. And these producers, by showing how butthurt they are about the 2016 election, are getting ready to poison that because they're upset that their candidate lost. Well, your candidate lost and you have to get over it. Life goes on. It's been a year now since Hillary Clinton lost the election, and we all have to deal with the fact that the American people chose Donald Trump to be their next president of the United States, and he is currently in charge because a majority of we the people voted for Donald Trump. If you'd like to see more videos on this channel, you can donate to my Patreon by clicking the link in the description box. And if you want to try some of my SJS Direct Universe titles, you may do so by clicking the link to Amazon.com in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.